Welcome to a very special Beyond the Waves Celtic football show, Bampot Book Launch extravaganza. My name is Graham Wilson, and tonight we have a very special panel of folks who have been instrumental in all of the Bampot book launches, going back to the very first, back in the Bronx, with a book launch that I was a part of, and I have very fond memories of. We're going to take a look back at some of the great moments of the Bampot book launches in the past, as well as look ahead to the Bampot book launch coming up on April 6th at the Celtic Supporters Association, where Paul Larkin himself, the green and white writer, is going to be introducing his latest book, The Last Pearl Diver. But before we get stuck into this, let's meet the man himself. Let's get his thoughts, as we sort of take this journey. The green and white writer himself, Paul Larkin. Hail, Paul.
Hail, Graham.
Paul, did you ever think that, when you came up with this idea that you'd be 5 book launches later, talking about, the size and the scale of what we're dealing with at this point? I mean, right now you're at 200 confirmed attendees to this next book launch on April 6th. That's quite a feat.
Yeah, I mean, it's doing it to the people, basically. It's one of the things where you can't plan these things, or you can't say, oh, no, we'll do this, and then in 6 months we'll do that, and then another 6 months we'll do that. It just kind of evolves and goes on for there. If you see kind of the little acorns of the first one in the Celtic House in the Bronx, right through to the last one, which when the place is kind of busting at the seams and stuff, it's very humbling. It's doing a lot of other people as well who help out with the work and stuff like that. And it's just something that I don't think, I've always said you can't take criticism or congratulations too seriously. You've just got to kind of keep focused and keep going. And I think that's one of the reasons why that it has kept going, is to kind of everybody around it's kind of kept their feet on the ground and no try to get a heady steam.
Yeah, no question about it. Before we go any further, let's meet the rest of the panelists tonight. First off, joining us from Aberdeen, Sam McLeod. Hail, Sam.
Hail, Graham. How's it going?
Yeah, fantastic, pal. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. You're going to give us some insight into the second Bampot book launch that took place at the Admiral. Fond memories of that day specifically, and we'll get more into the specifics a bit later on. But also joining us, the president of the Bronx Boys CSC, a man who needs no introduction, really, Chaz Duffy. Hail, Chaz. Thanks for joining us.
Graham, boys, how we doing? Hail.
Yeah, fantastic, pal. And also joining us, the creator of CelticTalk.org, as well as the purveyor of all things nonsensical and technologically involved. It's the gaffer, Josh Gaffney. Hello, Josh.
Hail, Graham.
Thank you so much for joining us as well, sir. Now, Chaz, you and I mean, what we want to deal with specifically is that first book launch there in the Bronx Boys CSC, the Celtic House specifically. And I was so humbled when Paul invited me up to this book launch, where I'd only met Paul once before, and I just started the Beyond the Waves Celtic football show maybe a couple months previously. I had a lot of apprehension. I got to be honest. I mean, I know what the Celtic community is like and how it's so welcoming, but still, there's such a level of anxiety. I mean, what's the Bronx going to be like? I'd never been there. Am I going to do something stupid where people are going to think I'm an idiot? There's just so much nervousness, and I mean, all that was removed as soon as I got to the Celtic House. I mean, it's such a special sort of place, and just the environment that's created there is just it was magical, and it really put myself and the Rev and the coach at ease immediately. Let me get your thoughts though. When Paul approached you about doing a book launch at the CSC, Paul was a member of the CSC at that point, but what did you envision for it? I mean, what were your first thoughts when he asked you about it and told you what his plans were?
To be honest, I had no idea. It was like a book launch, what's going to be involved in it. Try to get a bit of background on that, and I had no idea. And to be honest, I didn't really know about Beyond the Waves show, or do you know what I mean, at that time. I don't think the one in the Celtic House is so much an internet Bampot book launch, was just a Bampot book launch. Do you know what I mean? I was still struggling to come to terms with Facebook after leaving Bebo, never mind all the Twitter and Spreaker and all the rest of it. But I mean, I didn't know what to expect. I says to Paul, maybe you need, just let us know, and put a couple of posters up about the place and organise a bit of food, and then basically it was down to you and the Reverend coach and that, and Paul himself and all the Paul's pals that come up that day, and A few of the boys that hung about after it, and it was just honestly a great day. Thoroughly enjoyed it, and it was like 6 months after the twin sisters were born, and I was just like, great, it's a good day out for me in the piss, like, do you know what I mean? And lots of bacon rolls, and I think that was actually the first cash and carry buffet. And we didn't need MD running about with a hand sanitizer for the fish stained hands because it was right beside the toilet. But you know, everybody enjoyed themselves, and I don't think, to be honest, like, nobody knew how it was going to play out or what was going to happen at it, but it turned out to be a great day.
Yeah, it really did. And you're right. I mean, nobody really knew, what sort of, what the character of the day was going to be like. I mean, what the tone of everything was going to be like. I mean, obviously we know Paul was coming out with his book, and everybody was buzzing for that and wanted to support him in every way. But what really stood out to me, I mean, obviously the result that day really spurred things on. Victor Wanyama coming up with a brilliant goal to get a 1-0 result against Hearts at home. That made it all the more memorable. But as we got more into the discussion with Paul about the book, and we noticed the folks that were at the game, that were at the pub to watch the game, they stuck around, and there was a lot of curiosity. I think nobody there really was knowing how it was going to transpire, but everybody stuck around. They were very attentive and very participating, which I thought was fantastic. Especially considering it's for me, I was very self-conscious. Like, are people going to take me seriously? And once again, I mean, everybody made us feel welcome, and Paul was absolutely brilliant throughout it. Paul, let's go back to you for a second. I mean, that was where everything started. What was the sort of the stimulus? When and where did you get the idea? Like, right, I want to do a book launch, and why did you do it? What did you want to get out of it?
Well, at that time, I mean, that was basically 2 weeks before just over 2 weeks before I left New York again, and I knew at that time, privately, that I would be doing it again, and I felt that, I wanted to try and sort of give something back to the club, because they'd been so good at welcoming me throughout the whole time, and there was a lot of kind of highs and lows watching Celtic in that club, and great days, and I've always said one of the best days in my life was in that club when Samaras scored the 2 goals at Ibrox, because as Chaz will tell you, the club was absolutely packed that day. The Buckfast was in full flow, and all that kind of thing, and Gary had came over from New Jersey, we talked to him, and there was a build up that day, to the point when, by the second that, Samaras went past McGregor that day and put it in, it was just like lift off, and it was just fantastic. So that was obviously about a year later with the book launch, and I just thought, let's try and have a good day and stuff like that. And of course, Chaz, being Chaz, was straight away like, well, let's get bacon and sausage and all that for all the boys. I'm sure Chaz will remember there was a couple of guys demanding Morton's rolls for it, and of course we were saying, of course I'll be there. And I remember Marty Cramsheep doing Manhattan came up and was like, fucking no Morton rolls, these are they, But, that was the crack, and it was great. There's always two things you worry about with a book launch. Is, first of all, will you sell the books that you've got there? And second of all, will people enjoy it? And it was absolutely brilliant, because every book was sold before the game even started that day. It was just fantastic, the support straight away. There was also the fact that, the British Heart Foundation made an absolute fortune out of that day, primarily because Chaz actually donated the door fee that everybody paid, that would normally go to pay for the games. Kevin Devine bought Jackie McNamara's top that he won the day. We stuck 10 in a row for $1,000. So the British Heart Foundation, out of like 35 guys in a pub, made about $1,000 in money in sterling. Also the fact, and I detailed this in my last book, that I could not have handpicked a better crowd that day, because the people that were there are the people who kind of effectively meant the most to me in America on that day, and some people might think, so-and-so wasn't there and so-and-so wasn't there, did they not mean anything? And the answer is, well, just listening to what I just said, the people that were there are the ones that meant most to me. So, the guys obviously like Chaz, yourselves, and Rev and Coach and all that, who, would obviously have been having good crack playing stuff. Guys like Frankie and Nicky, if you're doing Queens, and Marty from Manhattan, and obviously Gary Haley. It was just fantastic to get all these people there. then of course, after everything, like anybody, you're always worried about something else, and then if you start worrying about the game, then Victor pops up, and you think fantastic, and everything's going well, and suddenly bang, Big Fraser, we get a penalty, it hurts, and suddenly boom, he saves it, and then it just that just kind of completed the circle. And then subsequently, of course, we've done the show, and I think it was actually streamed live on the internet as well in terms of pictures, which I know got a huge response, because suddenly people could see what was going on, and that was just brilliant, and I think there was such a phenomenal feedback about that day. And I can honestly say that it was definitely one of the kind of happiest days of my life, because it was just so fantastic. And as I said, how I described it in the book was like the scene in Goodfellas when he goes round telling you about all his mates. That's what it was like for me, and I'll never forget it.
Did you know straight away, while the day was happening, or maybe just immediately after that, once you returned to Scotland, that you had to have another one of these, that you were on to something? Yeah,
definitely. Obviously when I went back to Scotland, the first priority was to get a house and get work and all that sort of stuff. And that was kind of because what we'd done was came back and then literally stayed at my mother's for a couple of days, then went to Ireland. So we didn't really even be able to do that for about 2 weeks. And then we got a house about 3 weeks later. Once we settled in the house, that's when I started thinking about it and started to speak to a couple of people about, maybe we should try and do one of these as well, because my kind of Twitter following was steadily going higher, and I thought, well, we might get like 30 or 40 people there, and we'll get, because I've got like 1,000 followers, or maybe probably only about 600 followers on Twitter at that point. And then if we can get like 10% of them coming along, then it'll be good, because obviously my only experience of it once was the Bronx, and there was maybe 35, 40 people there, and that was fantastic. And I thought, well, just do that again. And so it was other people like say Liam Power and that who was like, right, okay, the Admiral's free, and I'd never been in the Admiral in my life. And so, I knew nothing about it. And so we booked it for the subsequent April.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, we broadcasted it live. There were pictures going around the world. I mean, we had callers calling into the show that day from Australia. Chris McMonagle. Who obviously many folks are familiar with from the Lost Boys. Here, it's 2 p.m., in the Bronx there, and you can see on Skype as we were talking to him, the sun's just coming up where he was in Australia. So literally the word of what was going on that day and the environment and the experience went around the world, not just to Scotland. And I think there was a buzz that was built from that. And as you mentioned, the building blocks were set, and getting up to the Admiral. That was a very special day. Sam, let's get you in here. You were there for that day. It just so happened coincidentally and magically that, this was a very big day, not just in terms of the book launch, but for Celtic as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Graham. Paul's definitely got a sense of style when it comes to booking a book launch. It was a fantastic day. I don't think anybody could have predicted the score, that day. It was, it was really a great occasion to be a part of.
Yeah, no question. Now, Sam, let me get your thoughts. I mean, it's a bit different when you have a group of folks from the Bronx where so many people are coming in from all different areas, and it's going to be broadcast live. What were your expectations, though? When you got the invite to the book launch itself, obviously you're familiar with Paul's work, but have you been to other book launches? Had you heard about the book launch that had taken place in the Bronx? And based on this, what were you expecting to see, going into it? And what were your sort of reflections, after the day?
To be honest, Graham, I really didn't know what to expect. Paul and I had sort of conversed on Twitter previously, but that was the first day that I'd actually met him sort of in the flesh. So, we travelled out from Aberdeen, myself and my girlfriend, booked up in a hotel, couldn't get tickets for the game, unfortunately, so, watched it in a bar, got ready and then walked down to the book launch. I didn't really know what to expect at all. But when I got there, what I experienced really blew me away. It was such a great night. It was really something good to be a part of.
Like you mentioned there several times, the influence that Twitter has had, and in terms of spreading the word and in terms of forming these friendships and allegiances. What's that process like? I mean, you go, obviously it was a magical day. Celtic win the league, and they do it in some sort of style. They're in Kilmarnock. There's scenes from, Glasgow Central Station, just a massive huddle. And then, of course, the euphoria, just passes along when everybody gets to the Admiral. What's that process like, though? You get to the Admiral there, and there's all sorts of folk who are just as excited as you are about what had taken place that day. There's so many people that you've probably talked to on a very regular basis, but you don't know them in a personal way. What's that interchange like? When you are starting to meet people, and then you realize, oh, that's such and such from Twitter.
Yeah, it's a great question, Graham. Absolutely, because you walk in and you don't know anybody. You've never met anybody before, and you look around the room and you recognise a couple of people from their Twitter photos, which is bizarre. And and you speak to them, and it's immediately there's just it's a family-like feeling, and you go to the bar and people stop you and say, "Oh, hey, I know you. You're Sam. How are you? How's it going? How have you been? What are you up to?" And it's just such a fantastic feeling for people that you've never met before to speak to you and just accept you immediately. It is very, it's an overused cliche, I guess, but it's very much a family feeling.
Well, no question. I mean, obviously you have Celtic that bonds us all, and then there's certain commonalities that we all as Celtic supporters are going to share, and you expect that. But there's also a sense of camaraderie that's a level deeper, where you're with like-minded people who also have an appreciation for Paul's books. What do you think it is about Paul's writing that brings people together in that way and sort of captivates people like that?
I guess I can only really speak for myself here, but reading Paul's books, the one thing I always sort of think about is when I'm reading them is it's he writes in a way that makes you remember what you were doing on that day. So he'll describe being at a game and you think, yeah, I know what I was doing that day. And he has a real way of making you feel part of the action and sort of reminding you of your own experiences of that game and that time and that day. And I think that's a really unique thing.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, for myself, I have a completely different perspective, and that's to be expected. I mean, much of what Paul's written about, I wasn't a Celtic supporter for. I didn't even know Celtic existed, but it's similar in the sense that, for me, it gives me the ability to get transported back to that time as if I was there, and it educates me in the process, not just, about the facts of what had taken place, the scoreline or, the substitutions or whatever, but what it felt like, what it meant, during that time. And I think that's very unique and something that's very valuable, specifically to what Paul does. Gaffer, let's hear from you, because this obviously was also your first Bampot book launch. Were you a bit overwhelmed, when you attended this? I mean, again, Celtic won the league that day. It was just so exciting. There's so many people going in. Next thing you know, there's conga lines going around the place. What were your expectations going into it? I mean, was this just like, gathering of like-minded people, maybe a meet and greet, something like that? Was it everything that you thought it could be? I mean, were there any surprises?
Quite frankly, going into it, I didn't really have any idea what it was going to be like. Before that, I hadn't really spoke that much with Paul. I basically invited him to basically advertise him a little bit on my website, and that was about it up to that point. And I knew a few other people that were going to the book launch, and I was eager to see them and meet them. But there was quite a few other people that I met on that day. And it exceeded my expectations, really.
I mean, that was really the day when you became more involved in Hail Hail Media. Now, I mean, it's where you got linked up with some of the. Tell us a bit about you meeting some of the responsible hands, I guess, if you will, in the Hail Hail Media universe, and how that took off from that day.
Well, first of all, I'd started the Paradise Preview show with you, and I met a few listeners of the show, and it was great to meet a few actual people in the flesh that listened to the show.
The little people.
And it was also great to meet Paul himself in the flesh.
Yeah, well,
And,
listen, Gaffer. I mean, it's not all about like a big fan party for you. I mean, this was Paul's book launch. You got to remember that. But I know there's going to be just people swooning. But no, that's fantastic, Paul. This was just a springboard for you. Obviously it's much different going from the Bronx event, and then this was much more of a live event, much more interactive. There's just a group of people. There wasn't, the radio show or anything to sort of crutch upon. And many of the folks hadn't even watched the game in the pub. They were coming from the game. Yeah. So there was that much more of an energy level. Tell us about, I mean, what were you thinking when it started to build?
Well, I mean, it built towards the end because before that, the 2 weeks before that, we were gearing up to win the league at Ibrox, and then Callum Murray decided, no, you're not going to win the league at Ibrox. So suddenly, people started to think, Christ, we could win the league the same day as the book launch. And you think, well, fair enough, then that'll be good, whatever. And then it kind of gets closer, and then on the day, I mean, the day was so unbelievably stressful for me.
Sure.
Like, you wouldn't even imagine, because it wasn't even just the book launch. It was the fact that had Mike Boyd coming over for Chicago,
right?
Literally that morning. So get him Central Station, and of course there's like about 5 million people at Central Station got to Kilmarnock. So we get herded on the train, and we're on the train like sardines down to Kilmarnock, and then you're kind of like, all right, we can win the league today, but what if we get beat? And that starts to go into your head, and then of course the team come out and Charlie McGrew plays like Johan Cruyff, and we win 6-0. And, it was just like, right, okay, get back to Glasgow as much as possible. So I sort of raced back and literally was the first guy there at the train station and got on a train that left in about 30 seconds, literally. And there's nobody on it. And then so I thought, all right, everybody's coming up on the next one. So I'd got in touch with Mike and said to him, I'm in this bookies at Central Station, blah, blah, blah. And I always remember it was a bookies that had an automatic door. And I was kind of sitting watching the results come in as they were. And the door was opening and closing every time. Obviously, somebody's walking through it and stuff, going back and forward. And literally, it opens, and there's just, all you could hear was, Glasgow Celtic champions! Be about 5,000 people in Central Station, which, of course, became, the big huddle when it went viral on YouTube and stuff. Mike came in and we embraced. And, that's probably when I sort of got myself together a wee bit, because when Mike walked in, and I'm sure Chaz and yourself, Graham, will appreciate this as well. Here's a guy coming from Chicago, right, to watch a Celtic game, and we win 6-0, we win the league, and he was absolutely over the moon. They're just genuine. It's easy to take for granted, and I thought, right, I need to get my head out my own arse and start kind of enjoying this, Yeah. So I'm sitting like fretting about this boot launch, and the Celtic have just won the league, won 6-0. So we go along to the bar. And I'd never been in as I said before, I've never been in the Admiral Bar in my life. And I go along there, and there's nobody. It's still only about maybe 4 o'clock, and the boot launch is starting at like 5. So a couple of Guinnesses and old Dutch courage and stuff like that. A couple of my sort of close friends appear, so, all right, how you doing, that kind of thing. And then sort of get carried away, because I want to drink, maybe 5 or 6 Guinnesses. And then there was Dave Ross, who owns the Admiral. He was kind of floating about, and then there was a young boy, Mark. He was kind of controlling it, and he was panicking a wee bit, back and forth, because they were panicking. There was just going to be like a deluge on the pub. No for the boot launch primarily, but because it's a kind of known Celtic pub. We just won the league, and it's right next to Central Station. So I'm standing at the bar, and Mark, who's kind of controlling it, said to me, when are you going to go down to the boot launch? And I said, well, when folks show up, because and he went, no, there's about 70 people down there. It's just like, what? And then as Sam and Josh will tell you, you can get into the bit where the boot launch was without going into the bar. So people were just going straight downstairs into the basement where the boot launch was, no coming into the bar, and I never seen anybody. So I was like, holy shit. So when I went down the stairs, it was just like, I mean, you just could not believe the scene. I mean, it was literally like, everywhere I went, people were like, oh, shaking your hand and all this kind of thing, and people coming up. And of course, like as Sam says, like Sam was someone I recognised immediately, primarily because his Twitter photo was very like his, actual face.
Thanks, mate.
That's that's something that isn't always applied, because I mean, when I seen Gaffer's 24, he looked quite, good looking, but so it was kind of like, it was just this tornado of people everywhere. You're like, and everybody was drunk and that, but the atmosphere was fantastic. And
Hey, Chaz, you listen to this? This is where his ego went, right here.
So it was kind of like, I think at the first, it was Jason was kind of, I knew Jason. We'd been bantering before it. He was going to slag me off first, right? That's always the case in Scotland. I can get a bit banter for that kind of thing. And but I knew then when I seen him, he was absolutely legless, basically. It started, I thought, Christ, this is going to be worse. I really need to, because this is going to be probably only my second ever public speech, and there was all that kind of thing. And public speaking is something that's never bothered me. I know some people just like, oh my God, I can't do it. It's never really bothered me at all, So Jason, obviously people know who his brother is and stuff like that. And his other brother's like a big DJ in Glasgow and stuff as well, eh? So I thought, I have something I have to say right away to get the crowd on my side. So Jason goes up and he's just blethering away and he was getting a lot of laughs and stuff like that. And then he said, because it was Easter, and he said, it's a big time for, Paul and myself as being a big Republican, but Paul's definitely the biggest Republican I've ever met, because the picture of George Bush's got is unbelievable. And that went doing a storm kind of thing. Then I went on the stage and just basically said, the Higgins family has got a fucking superstar DJ, best snooker player that ever lived, and I get landed with this cunt. and that sort of, got people inside and stuff. And at the time, it was kind of prevalent with, Rangers were in their kind of last rites phase. And they kind of said a lot about, the cheating that had went on and stuff like that. And that was it. And it was like, probably thought when I was on stage, I was on for 5 minutes. I think I was on for about 25, and it just kind of flew by. Came off, and everybody was just going crazy in that. And then that's when I started to meet people like Sam and Josh and Chris Kajawa and that, and they were all kind of standing about. And it was funny putting names to faces, especially, I mean, I know what Josh was saying there and Sam was saying there, but I'd been talking to these people from a different country, basically, most of the time. And so to actually be standing beside them and all that kind of thing was just unbelievable. And then the rest of the night kind of flew by me, it was like this whirlwindy things all going around me. People coming up, shake your hand and stuff. But, if I was to say who or how long or how many, no chance, because it was just, my mind was flying. And then, before we knew it, it was finished. And everybody was gone. And I was standing at the bar with Mike Boyd, and me and Mike were standing, and I said, Mike, did you think it went well? Because I'm not really sure. And he went, listen, when the people conga out your due, then it's went well. and he was like, really? And that was the first guys at times I'd met the TikTok guys, and they were interviewing me and all that outside and stuff. And then after it, what happened was I got up the stairs expecting to be like, right, where's the party? And everybody was gone. Literally everybody was gone. So there was only me, Mike, and then we seen Josh, Chris Kajawa, Chivchenko and her pal, Francis, and Mammy Evan, and that was it. So we went across to the bar, I can't remember, it was a sports bar, McGinn's or something like that, at Central Station. And that was the first time I actually started to relax that day. It's about 8:30, and it was a beautiful night. And as I'm sure Josh will verify, and I'm amazed he's not fucking spoke about this already, by the way. I went up in a karaoke and broke the house down by singing a Neil Diamond song, Forever in Blue Jeans.
It was the best man of the night, definitely. Without a doubt.
The rest of it must have been birds.
Aye, I mean, it was actually... He had birds up singing with me and all this kind of thing, and then, he boost my own ego or that, but people likened it to Frank Sinatra last time he was there. But no, that was just fantastic. And I remember in Josh and we had a really good drink and a really good laugh. But then suddenly about 10 o'clock, I looked at Mike Boyd, and I was about to say to him, God, Mike, you look shattered. And I thought, Christ, the guys just came over from America, you won't want to go to his bed. And Mike looks at me and goes, you look sharp. Do you want to go to your bed? And I was like, you know what? That sounds good. Match of the day. And that was it. And I went back and I remember lying on the bed thinking, that was like, I can't even remember what happened, but it felt fantastic. And then funnily enough, I think it was 2 days later, and this is when I really started to get respect for Josh. I lost it after it, obviously, but
of course.
was that he'd recorded all this on video. and it was like I could not believe what I was watching, because what had happened, I think, was quite a lot of people that were around me at the time and didn't come to the book launch. I think they were a bit apprehensive. They thought, oh no, I'm not sure about this kind of thing, and I don't know what it'll be like, so they didn't come. I watched it when Josh, he'd done the video, and I never had any knowledge whatsoever of Josh doing the video, but I remember him saying to me, do you mind if I, video it? He said after it, do you mind if I put it on my website? And I said, aye, of course. And when I seen it, it was a really fantastic, memory of the thing. And when I sent that out to people, nobody, I think, could believe what they were seeing. I just think they thought what they were expecting to see was like 5 rows of chairs and 6 people sitting down quietly while I spoke about the book. And
right.
then 10 minutes later, just kind of played my guitar or, away quietly or whatever. And when they seen this just bursting full of energy and life, I think they were like, Christ almighty, this is unbelievable.
And people watch that and they think to themselves, I got to be part of that, After that experience, and I think you do a great job of painting a picture, describing, what it was like, not just to be part of it, but also from your perspective. After that experience, after that first book launch in Scotland, I mean, obviously people are united and brought there because of you, because of your writing, because they're interested in your books and what your latest offering is. But the work is really taken care of for you once everybody gets there, because everybody's a Celtic supporter. Everybody, is like-minded. And as Sam pointed out, people are meeting each other for the first time, even though they've talked to each other for days and days, and they feel like they already know themselves. So, after having that, did a lot of the anxiety go away with the next book launch that was coming out? I mean, a lot of that work is taken care of for you, isn't it?
Well, one of the things you learn, first and foremost, is you never beg anybody to go, because the reason for that being is the people that come want to be there, right? So, as you say, you're kind of halfway there. What I was saying about the public speaking thing was that when you've got that microphone in your hand, you're in control of the situation. And, people are really polite in Scotland, and they probably didn't even realise it, but when you're standing with a microphone in your hand, they will be quiet without you having to tell them to shut up, which you should never do anyway, but you should have ways of, keeping them captivated or whatever. Mm-hmm. And, you do get the odd shouting on that, but if you can I'm probably at my best when I'm dealing with that stuff than I am actually just, speaking whatever.
Well, it's not like you're Bomber Brown or anything. I mean, you're a man of wealth and taste.
Yeah, because, I think the first book launch, one of my mates, I was talking about, the ugly side of Scottish society, and that we've all kind of faced it at one time in our lives or another. And one of my mates was standing there half pissed, and he was staring at me the whole time as I'm doing this speech, and he shouted out, aye, what school did you go to? And I just said right away back to him, I says, Brad, if you went to school, I'd be fucking amazed, And that kind of went down, and somebody says after, it's like, oh, didn't heckle him for Christ's sake, and that's, I didn't mind that, sometimes there was a later on book launch that Sam and Josh were at, I was doing a speech, and I think I was taking questions or something, and there was one guy kept shouting all the time, and I couldn't hear a word he was saying. So I was just kind of like, oh, I keep going, mate. I've always wanted to read Bahati a double act, and what you just come up here and all this kind of thing. And then when that settled down, that was when Jerry McMahon, God bless him, I think Sam and Josh will remember this, at the book launch, asked a question that went on for about 25 minutes. And it literally kept going and going and going. And it was a great question, but it just kept going. It was all about, them getting stripped of titles and stuff like that. And so I thought, right, I knew what I was going to say. So as soon as he finished that, I just said, sorry, Jerry, can you repeat that, please? This daft things like that, you do pick up, these kind of things as you go. But when you've got, as I say, when you've got the microphone and you've got the people in the building, that's when the stress stops.
Yeah, no question about it. Now, you had a nice turnout for that the book launch at the Admiral, and judging by the response on Twitter, in the days after, there were a lot of folk who were saying, I really wish I was there. That sounds like a brilliant time. And, Paul, you need to let us know when the next one is. Like you said, there was video of it. People were looking at it like, oh, that's brilliant. It's just a way of continuing on the party. And at that point, I think you probably are aware that you're onto something here. And this is an avenue. This is a medium for everybody to get together, not just, to get together and have a good time, but also to talk about, your books and the relevant content. And, so getting into the next book launch, which was in September of last year, at the Greyfriars, and I believe you were launching Albert Duguay and Albert Duguay and Wim, during that one, and you found that. I mean, there was just such a huge outpouring for demand. Once it was announced, obviously you had the folk that were there, who immediately were like, right, that's me, I'm going again. But I mean, what was it like, all of a sudden getting, just an influx of requests, for attending and things like that. I mean, obviously you had a bigger venue, so that was, you were able to facilitate that. But I mean, was that a bit overwhelming? And then with the increase in the number of people coming out, did you feel the need to sort of up the ante from the last time?
Well, the reason that boot launch, I mean, first of all, it wasn't really a boot launch. It was launching stuff that I'd already done. It was maybe a Bampot sort of night. But the reason that came about was the demand of people saying to me, "Oh, when are you having one? When are you having one? When are you having one?" And it was kind of like, okay, well, day one. And I'm never overly keen on doing anything in August, September, primarily because, these are the months when Celtic supporters are paying out the most.
Yeah.
In terms of the season tickets, in terms of the Champions League or Europa League, and in terms of the new strips that come out. They're all roughly out about that time. So it's kind of like, and it was a city centre venue as well and all that kind of thing. And it just went like that, literally filled in one day, boom, and that was it. And probably the one mistake we made that time was thinking, right, okay, the job's done because that's the venue full, and we never really spoke about it until it. And probably some people didn't turn up because of that, at the time. So there's probably less than there would be on the list. But it was definitely that night where I started to think, people, you can kind of feel people looking at you differently a wee bit,
Mm-hmm.
or people staring at you at the venue and stuff and coming up for a photograph or an autograph and that. And you do, I mean, I didn't care who you, well, actually that's not true because some people will only feel like this, but you are thinking to yourself, A, didn't make an embarrassing prick of yourself, and then B, didn't he sort of do this grand thing where I've seen somebody else doing, where they sort of grandiosely pulled a pen out when they were doing an autograph and all that kind of thing, just as I say, like one of the things, and Chaz will tell you, we used to talk about all the time, be yourself and keep it real all the time, didn't just end up, so
unless you're Gav.
Well, obviously, but it's funny you said, because that was the first time as well where I'd done a speech and then took questions, and then I took questions for the floor, which was great. It's something I've never done before in my life. And then after we'd done that, half the people in there were like, "When are you taking questions?" I said, "Well, we've already done that." "Oh no!" And they had to day me. And one of the things that was quite funny was there's a guy on the night who asked the same question 3 times. And so again, this is you try to be polite and all this, feet in the ground. The question was roughly, whatever Celtic had done, why were Sevco on the back page of the newspaper this morning about some nonsensical thing? And so I sort of say, well, you know what this country's like, you know what these papers are like, you shouldn't even be looking at these papers anyway, but that's what it's been forever, and it will be like that forever, kind of thing. Fine. And then like 20 minutes later, he's back with, no, but I want to know exactly why they were on the back page and we weren't. And you feel like saying, well, I'm not a fucking editor, but you can't. You just got to again. So then the next thing, this guy goes up to speak. He's a different guy, and he asks the same question. It turned out to be his father. So, you're sitting there like, oh my God. But then thankfully what saved it was a very old and dear friend of mine, Average Joe Miller, of Not the View fame. He appeared. And I was like, Joe, come up on the stage and help me, please, for Christ's sake, and he came up and he done a few questions and stuff like that. But by that time it was a complete rabble, and there was no doubt about it, and before I go into, because obviously there was a big party of the night was Josh. Something really weird happened to me after that was I literally could not get out the door. There was people because I was saying to my mate, right, when I leave, I think better just kind of do a sharp exit and he was just like, aye, fuck off, who do you think you are, kind of thing. And when I went to leave, I was literally couldn't get out for an hour. Eventually go out the door, and we walked out, finally got away, getting a lift home for Suzanne and Tim King. And this guy just came up to me from nowhere, never seen the boy before in my life, and went, have a pizza, big man. And walked back in the do, and I was like, what the fuck? And the 3 of them stood and looked at me and went, Christ almighty, you've made it. Somebody's gave you a pizza in Glasgow, So I was like, I said, this is unbelievable. So go back to the car. I was walking on air. I was like, this is fantastic. Go back to the car, open the pizza, bit in it. I swear to God, my mouth almost exploded. It was like the most spiciest pizza I've ever tasted in my entire life. So then everybody was like, somebody's trying to kill you. You know, and I was all this kind of thing. But there was also a bit, what I liked about that night, though, Graham, just to kind of do a decent segue, is the fact that there was also a wee surprise award for Gaffer that night, which I think was a really good thing, considering what he said about how he hadn't really spoke to anybody or met anybody at the first book launch in Scotland, and then at the second book launch, he's up on stage getting an award.
Yeah, Gaffer, expand a little bit on that. You know, that's really where your fame, you know, this worldwide acclaim that you've grasped recently, it really took off. Tell us about that. Tell us about, you know, that night and receiving the recognition for a lot of hard work that you had put in for Hail Hail Media over the corresponding weeks and months.
Well, basically, before the book launch, the first book launch, hadn't really spoke to Paul that much. I did the Paradise preview, but then after that, when I did the video, everything started kicking off. Hail Hail Media was kicking off, and Paul invited me to do some work for Albert Duggan Wim, his story channel on Charlie Magoo. So I did some illustrations for it, and then invited me to create a website for Paul himself. Created a website for Paul as well. Was happy to do that. Put everything on it exactly as I wanted it. And then also I created the Hail Hail Media website. Well, updated it. I can't remember who designed the original. I think it was Richard. And it was really in the second book launch that I really felt properly involved. But it was the first book launch that really kicked off my participation. Kicked off everything with me, Hail Hail Media, and, you know, even yourself. So I was really proud on that night, you know, just to be involved with everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I kid you, you know, a lot, but it was recognition that was very well deserved. You put in a lot of hard work, and you know, the product, the end product has been, you know, excellent, and you know, you're definitely worthy of all that praise. Did you notice during that book launch? Did you see familiar faces who, you know, maybe had met for the first time at the prior book launch, but you know, all of a sudden at this one, you know, maybe they had struck up friendships that they hadn't previously had, and everybody was much more comfortable amongst themselves?
Yeah, the second book launch, it was definitely more, there was more familiarity between a lot of people. There was a few more people that I recognised. Also felt more like a kind of book launch where the first one kind of felt more like a, you know, celebration of the Commander game with a bit of the book launch in between as well. I met a few good people like Lorenzo and so on, and a few more fans, you know, like the Paradise preview and Hail Hail Media and so on. So it was a lot more social integrated and friendly on the second night. Not saying that it was hostile or anything the first night, it was just a lot more familiarity between everyone the second night.
Yeah, people were able to, you know, understand the aura that is the Gaffer, you know, the being that you have, the presence, which, you know, is important. And I think that's an important part of this. You know, as those relationships build and develop amongst themselves, then it sort of grows along the context of the book launch, of the Bampot Book Launch. You know, and you know, you have hashtags on Twitter, and that becomes, you know, sort of the go-between. You know, what are folks doing before the book launch or after the book launch? And there's just so much of a buzz.
And also, Graham, I mean, that book launch that we're talking about there, that was the first time where they started to go viral because of the TikTok videos that were being done.
Yeah, tell us about that. I mean, because it didn't look like there was, you know, an apt theater or studio, I guess, if you will. I mean, you have Richard Swan from Carl Luke Shamrock, who's, you know, just, I mean, he's very, he's very persistent, if nothing else, and he does a fantastic job. But I mean, that was really the first time when we had something that seemed produced, you know, that had a sequence to it, and really spread the word out to those, not just you know, who hadn't made it, you know, but you know, maybe didn't hear about it, but those of us, you know, like Chaz and myself, who are over on this side of the Atlantic, who can't make it, but, you know, want to feel like we can experience it. I mean, where did Richard take you in to finally, you know, record a lot of this stuff?
It was in the toilet. Because what happens is Richard kind of follows me around everywhere at a book launch and says, you know, get that interview now and all that. And I always kind of make this thing where I say, I'll date at the start of the night when I'm not half cut, you know, and then it always ends up being the end of the night when you are half cut and you look back and you go, oh no. But that, I tell you, is that the kind of things. I mean, I have college lecturers say to me, "Oh, I was watching you on video last night," you know, and I'm like, please expand on that in public, you know, and it's definitely made me be recognised by people at Celtic Park, you know, and stuff like that, who aren't just looking for money, you know. That, oh, you know, and blah blah blah. And between that and the following book launch, I've had quite a lot of people kind of come up to me and say they've seen it and all that kind of thing. And, you know, I'm not sure how many views of that, but the amount of people that have come up and spoke to me about specifically those videos that were done by the TikTok guys is absolutely incredible. And I'm not just talking about sales spotters. As I say, I'm talking about college lecturers. I'm talking about my fellow students, you know, people at the games, people all over the shop. I mean, I had this, again, there is always times where you could easily, and I tried to address that in the story I wrote, Projecting Paddy McCourt, where your ego could just get taken away from you, or in the id of your life, you know, just the pleasure-seeking thing could take over. And there's two incidents that I always remember that just basically put you in your place where you should be, really, you know, beside the rest of us. The first one was, I was sitting at college one day, and I saw this girl coming up to me, and she was absolutely drop-dead gorgeous. Tall, blonde, you know, good all-rounder, that kind of thing. And she's walking down, and I thought, Christ almighty, she's actually coming up to me here, like, you know. So I'm kind of like, you know, trying to play it cool, looking around, all this kind of thing.
Are you the green and white writer?
Yeah, and she comes up, and I noticed, that's what I say, so in the hand, she's got one of my books. I was like, oh, yeah, beauty, here we go. So she comes up to the book, and she goes, could you sign this book for me, please? I said, of course I can, darling, you know, help you anything you want. I said, who's it for? She goes, oh, it's for my father, he follows you on Twitter. I was like, oh, cheers, aye, see you later. And the other one was, you know, you do get quite, not quite a few, like nowhere near Kevin Bridges' standard or anything shite like that, but a couple of people come up to you at games now, like a few people I've seen where I sit at games now and come up and annoy me continuously. Nah, I'm not joking. But you get people coming up, oh, you Paul Larkin and this kind of thing, I've read your book or this or that, and aye, thank you, just talk to them and that kind of thing. And I'm at Dublin Airport 2 weeks ago, and this guy coming towards me, and he says to me, are you Paul Larkin? And I said, yeah, I am actually. And then he starts talking a foreign language to me. And I'm standing there like, what the hell is going on here? And then I realised that what he had actually said was, are you Polak?
So he's speaking Polish to you, and
Yeah.
you're like, you know,
Yeah.
sorry.
So these are reasons where, just at the point where your kind of ego can maybe be a wee bit inflated, they just bring you right back down to earth and realise you're just, you know, like the rest of us. But I mean, these videos, I mean, it's not just due to me on the videos or that. I mean, the production that Richard and that put in is absolutely incredible. You know, I mean, Josh will tell you as well, the way that they do them, you would never ever envisage that the way that they do them, you know, is how it's going to end up like it does on the actual thing, because it's absolutely incredible. And but as you say, I mean, you experience yourself, you know, when you were in Scotland. Richard's a very persistent guy.
Yes, yeah.
And he's always got that smile on his face. Look at these, come on, Betty. And you're like, Christ almighty. But, you know, they really are a huge part, an integral part of the book launches.
No question about it. I think that's a great point. You know, the fact that a lot of that footage that you wind up getting, you know, like you said, during my time in Scotland, I had a video camera out. Now, you know, I'm trying to splice things together. And a lot of it's very raw. You know, you just sort of get clips here and there.
What exactly are you talking about here? Yeah, the video camera out and the footage was raw.
Yeah, I'm just trying to splice footage together, you know.
Splicing what?
What are we used to up to?
Splicing the main brace by the sound of it, Graham.
Never mind all that then. But like you said, Richard is very.
Remember, we've got a young man on the show here, Gaffer. So
I don't hear anything out of the gaffer. I think he passed out.
Yeah, with the sexual disease you transmitted to him.
Oh, stop, please. Okay, it's tuberculosis, and I'm on antibiotics, so it's going to be fine. All right.
Disappointing to not be classed as a young man. What can I say?
Enough of this nonsense. But that's where we started to see, live footage of yourself speaking, about the book that you're launching at that point, about the event. But we're also seeing, footage of the gaffer himself and of Jason from the Homeboys and Shevchenko. I mean, just lively personalities. And
Shevchenko, lively personality.
So you're obviously catching on to the irony.
Well, let me just say, Graham, you met Shevchenko 3 times when you were in Scotland. How many? Every time? What did she do?
Well, she has this tendency of waiting outside. You agree upon a place to meet up. Be it a pub or wherever it's going to be, and she waits outside in the freezing cold, smoking however many cigarettes. Who knows? But you just think she'd go in, she'd get a table. Right, and then we'll go find her. But no, she stands outside, thinking we're not going to show up or something. It's very peculiar.
It's simply because she's got more issues than the Beano.
Fair enough. Fair enough. It definitely sounds like that. But we got a sense of of what the atmosphere was like from the toilet, as you mentioned. Now the next book launch in this sequence is at the CSA this past November. And, we've talked about it when you've come on the show, in terms of you feel this responsibility to take it up another notch each time. But, just it seems to do it on its own. The folks that come in, they create the atmosphere for you. And you had a lot more of an opportunity, like you were just referring to. You have more of an opportunity to speak directly to the crowd and have more of a Q&A. And, that I think fosters a lot of the relationship that you yourself have with the crowd. And Richard himself took the production, the video production, and otherwise up another notch, where you had sit-down interviews with Harper and Joe and Chris Kuyava and the whole Homeboys roster there. And you really, got a sense for what it was like to be there, not just, sort of on the periphery, but, really being there live and in person. Give us your thoughts on this last book launch that you had, the Bampot Book Launch, and then how that's going to translate into this next book launch coming up also at the CSA on April 6th.
Well, how I refer to that book launch is that was the one where the people who used to hate me even came in. There's quite a few people who had abused me on Twitter and things like that I'd never met or anything before. I came to that one, and then they come along and they're like, "Oh, remember I used to say this to you and that to you." You go, "Yeah, you fucking prick." And but it's kind of like that one was just. I mean, again, it was after a pretty poor game against Inverness Cali. We'd lost 1-0 and stuff like that. But people just came, and there was everybody was kind of on a high, and there was so many Bampots there that night. It was there was more Bampots there than there was in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Quite frankly, there was because obviously Harper and Joe had flown over from the island, and Chris McGuigan was there, and.
Well, Shevchenko returned again. She's the chief.
Yeah, she was paralytic, pretty much from arrival. As you kind of know when she's drunk when you just ask her, a very basic question, and she just stares at you as if you've just asked to, bed her mother or something. It's like you can't quite fathom it, and so that's the variables that always come with these book launches. Like you have all your best laid plans, and then somebody comes up pissed, and suddenly boom. It's different, but what I have to say is they had the very good raffle sellers, her and her friend, because that was one of the first night, and it'll be the same again this one, where the previous raffles and stuff had gone to various organisations and things like that, and several discussions about certain organisations, were they thankful enough, or did they actually care and stuff like that. So somebody had said to me on the week before it that you should make it something personal for yourself. It's like blah, blah, blah. And I thought, so well, what would that be, So it ended up being like my father died at 52 years of age in 1998, and it was because he had something called myotonic dystrophy, which was a muscle wasting disease. So I just thought to myself, right, you know what, I'll donate the raffle to the organisation that kind of helps that and that, because there's a couple of my family members and family members. That's another thing of being semi-famous now. I've even got new family members come forward and say they're related to me and stuff like that.
Come from everywhere.
Unfortunately, they come from Wishaw and Carluke, so you didn't really want to praise them, But so anyway, a few family members are suffering with this disease as well, and thankfully the treatment's a lot better than it was when my father had it. So That's what I done with the raffle then. And then for this raffle, it was a kind of weird one because there was something I had to do in mind, and it was kind of linked to that, to a blog that I did about, poverty in the East End of Glasgow, and in terms of how much it cost to watch Celtic, that I sort of thought that, I had this idea to develop something where it would be effectively a season ticket that I would buy through the proceeds of the next raffle, and then with all the shows every week have somebody else deserving, like Beyond the Waves and the Homeboys, Lost Boys, whatever it might be, somebody else deserving to go and use that ticket every week,
Mm-hmm.
Somebody that couldn't afford to go and stuff like that. So that's kind of anyway. So in terms of that, because, you always want to have a good raffle and stuff like that, I'd spoken to Simon Donnelly regarding getting a shirt. Now, this is a kind of ongoing joke between me and him, because he never kept anything apart from 2 shirts in his entire career. So when I'd asked him, I mean, this is the way football players think, and Chaz will remember this, so I'd say to him, I need something for the Wims Tim's book launch that's referring to 98. And he's like, well, I'll ask Matt Namara, and he kept Toys Topes and that, but so, what does Jackie do? He gives us a re-top for 1998, the one that he wears on the day that he stopped 10-0. You're like, holy shit. So I thought to myself, well, I don't want to go back, and I'm a lot closer to Donnelly than I am with McNamara, so I couldn't really ask him anyway, but I said, well, I know that Donnelly's only got 2 tops. One of them was a top that he swapped in the 1998 World Cup with a guy from Norway who doesn't even remember his name. So nobody wants that. We had this kind of discussion, and it was when they were at Partick Thistle. We had this discussion about these tops, and it was basically like Donnelly was saying, I know I got this top in the World, because people were saying, younger people in the Partick Thistle set were saying, well, you played for Scotland in the World Cup. It's like, aye, of course I did, Ken. So him and Matt Namara were obviously rooming together and all that kind of thing. And what had happened was, on the way out to the Brazil game, Donnelly had says, I'm going to get that Bebeto's top, and Bebeto was a huge player for Brazil at the time, and he'd done the baby celebration and stuff like that. And Matt, all right, fair enough. So of course, Jackie plays in the game, Simon Disney, at the end of the game, he gets Bebeto's top, So he effectively never took the top off for 2 weeks just to taunt Donnelly a bit. So Donnelly knows the next game against Norway, I've got to get somebody's top, So he swaps his boy this top and all that kind of thing. And so people will say, well, who was it and all that kind of start getting something like, I can't remember. So what did he look like? He's like, well, he was smaller than me and he had a wee beard. And the physio, Kenny Crichton, thinks about this and goes, Papa Smurf? And just everybody just explodes. So when I come to it, I say, well, they know what on that. And the only other top was, he said, I've got this top in the house, which is, it's got number 14 on it, and it's for 95, 96. And I was like, all right. I said, so it's obviously a substitute. He's like, I was never on the bench in 95, 96. That was my season. And that, blah, blah. He said, go and check it up, blah, blah, blah. So I went to the Celtic Wiki, checked it all out, and the only game that he was on the bench, basically, that season was against Paris Saint-Germain. I was like, it's a European top. And he's like, right, and that kind of thing, Ken. I was like, so, but that's your only top? He's like, no, you can have it. He says, I'm fucking embarrassed having a substitute top. No, this kind of thing. So that was it. So he then, typical football player, you've got to kind of tell them to do stuff, rather than ask them. So eventually, I was kind of like, well, I'm doing this book launch now. He's like, I can't come now. I'm a Dundee United assistant boss. Yeah. And I was kind of like, don't worry about that. You'll be sacked before it. So, but I said, but I'm needing that top. And he, what top? Oh, you want that Norway top? No, I'm not wanting the Norway top. I want the European top, the one for Paris Saint-Germain. He went, you know what? I think I've lost it. Oh, Jesus Christ. So then what happened was, he then had spoke to McNamara, and he was saying to McNamara, could you give him a top? And he's like, I ain't bother, but why don't you give him one of your tops? So he tells him, blah, 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 blah. Didn't keep them. And he's like, what about that Paolo Di Canio top you've got? And it was a top that Paolo Di Canio gave him. And he says, oh, Jesus, I'd forgot all about that. So, but I'm unaware of any of this conversation when it's happening. So then he sends the top. It comes with this Dundee postmark. I was like, what the hell was this? And then I looked at the thing, and it was a Dundee United stamped sort of franken thing on the envelope. I said, what the hell was this, Ken? So I opened his top. And I was like, he sent that Paris Saint-Germain top. looked at it, it's got number 7 on it.
Number 7, wow.
And I'm thinking, what the hell is this? And I seen the short sleeves as well, and I was like, Donny never wore short sleeves in his life for Celtic. So I texted him, and I was like, what's the story of this? He never got back to me for about 2 days, because obviously this was at the time, it was in between the Sevco games and the Hearts games.
Yeah.
Dundee United were all, like, we're brilliant, beat Sevco, we beat Hearts, and then they come to us and get annihilated. But, and he's like, I couldn't get you the top, so I sent it to, it's Paolo Di Canio's top. And I was like, Jesus Christ. And it's amazing because, as I say, if you have so many followers on Twitter and you have loads of interaction with people, half of you's thinking, for fuck's sake, I bet you some people will say, fascist bastard and all this kind of thing, you didn't want it and that. But he was like, this is what I'll do for you, because I've let you down, I'll get it framed, eh? So I took this top up to this frame, and this boy's going to frame it off for nothing. Well, Don is getting the bill basically, and that's what's going to be the raffle prize on April the 6th.
We should tell them that they're on some gold boots for God's sake.
Well, the funny thing about that, I mean, that's just a tangent, because he told me that story, was that when Paolo scored the goal, when he flicked over Nicky Walker's head at Pataudry, I'm sure Sam will remember it well, that was when, it was unbelievable, last minute, brilliant, golden boots and all the rest of it, and Fergus was just like, this is fantastic. We can market these golden boots in the Celtic shop, we'll get Paolo's signature on them, and everybody will buy them, we'll make a fortune of it. And the next again days, Paolo signed over all the copyright to Cash for Kids, who auctioned them for 52 grand, and Celtic never made a penny. That was Paolo.
Yeah, and Fergus was absolutely furious.
Yeah, to put it mildly.
No question. Now, for the listeners that are tuning in and maybe haven't experienced a Bampot Book Launch, well, first off, give us a sense. What's been the reaction so far? You put it out on Twitter, for the past couple of weeks. You announced April 6th that the CSA once again, talking about your upcoming book, The Last Pearl Diver. What's been the response so far? I mean, are there any spots left open at this point?
For the book launch?
For the book launch, yeah.
At the minute, there's 7. So, I mean, you always kind of overbook it. It holds 180, we're at 173. You always overbook it by about 20, because you always get 20, 25 people who just, for whatever reason, didn't show up on the night. But I mean, this is the scary thing, and I was talking to the gaffer about this earlier on, was that at the last book launch we had 201 names and 186 people turned up, right? And you always get that variable, as I say, people just not turning up for whatever reason. But we only got to 201 names like the day before the book launch, and now we're at 173 names, and there's still like 6 weeks to the book launch, so it's quite kind of scary, because I'll guarantee there's still 99% of people in the Celtic nation have no idea this is even happening or anything. So, that is quite scary. But what you can expect on the night is a wee bit different to what you happen to see at Bampot book launches. First of all, I'm not going to be on the stage ranting like I normally do, which is kind of been a theme of every book launch, where I think I'll go up and I'll say this and I'll try and be deep like Andy Warhol or something like that and say things, and then you go up and you're just like, fuck these honest bastards, fuck this, fuck that, and fuck the SFA and all that. Just you just feel like the sense is like you're standing there like Caesar Romero mainly. But and you're just like, and screw them, and then we'll be this, we'll do that, and all that kind of thing, But this time's going to be different, because we're going to have a sort of 90s theme in terms of the music. There'll be a kind of playlist of music that's going to happen to get you in the mode when the book actually takes place. Then there will be, I'm going to talk about why I wrote the book, who inspired me, and there are people in the audience that didn't even realise they inspired me, and I'll be letting them know how they inspired me. There are several Bampots featured in the book that in various guises, and like say yourself, Graham, Chaz, and Sam. I certainly know Sam's aware of it, and I know Sam's absolutely petrified of reading it, quite frankly.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah, because basically how it came about with Sam was I kind of knew what I was going to do. It was something I had in my head. And then the last Pataudry game, I stayed with Sam because we were doing a do up in Aberdeen, with us and the police, I think it was, basically. And it was something that just had in mind, and kept going. And then, so I asked him this question, which was basically, what was the name of that strip club at the harbour at such and such a year and all that kind of thing. And he came back straight away. And I said to him, I said,
we didn't go there.
I said to him, I said, that's brilliant because I can now finish this book. And it took him about 50 minutes to go, wait a minute, what do you mean by strip club? And I was like, oh, it's all right. So, but it was just something that I had in my head. So hopefully when he reads it, he'll not be too offended. But Chaz plays a big part in the book as well. Kind of knows himself, but there's it's his name, and there's a link to his current life within the book that hopefully he'll find quite funny. There's a few private jokes, obviously Graham, yourself, and the reason Gaffer's knowing it because he basically wouldn't have been alive at the time, so there was nothing I could draw on, for his youth to be like, oh well, you can be like this, that, and the next thing, because he's kind of still in his youth,
It's hard to get that in, yeah.
Aye, and then there's tiny wee bits of information, like Chaz, a mutual friend of ours of Chaz is Kevin Devine, and Chaz told me one day that Kevin used to stay in the house that Jock Stein had previously stayed in. So that made it into the book, in a different guise and stuff like that. So I'm going to be talking about all that, and then I'm going to actually be doing a reading for the book, which is something that I've never done outside a kind of podcast or something like that. I've been doing a live reading. I've kind of been practicing that for about a month now. And it's going to be a specific chapter. It's going to be a full chapter, and it's set in August 1993. It's based on a real incident, and it involves the main character and one of his best mates, and it involves the time when Celtic were in the League Cup semi-final draw that involved the Rangers. The draw was made at Ibrox. They done the draw. They flipped a coin. Basically what happened, because we couldn't play it, the Hampden was being reconstructed at the time, so it had to be played at Celtic Park or Ibrox. We flipped the coin. Joe Jordan called heads for Celtic. It was heads. And then Dougie Donnelly turned around to him and says, no, Joe, that's to see who's calling. To which me and my mate, who was a Hibs fan at the time, looked at each other just like, what the fuck? And literally sat there in silence. So I built a story all around that, involving different other stories and stuff like that. So that's what that chapter's about. It's about that and SodaStream. If you can ever cast your mind back to SodaStream and how stupid an invention that was, basically. So I'm going to be doing a reading for that, and hopefully there'll be a few laughs involved. And then the raffle will be done. One prize, that top that I just spoke about, framed, and then there will be the Quadrophenians, who I actually only ever seen live first in Wishaw the night where Gaffer ponied off his supposed broken leg. Which ended up being, I think, an ingrown toenail or something. But the Quadrophenians played that night in Wishaw, and I was asked to introduce them and stuff like that. And this band is just incredible. I mean, they're kind of like a mix of Oasis and the Stone Roses playing rebel music. And it just blew our minds when we watched it. Oh, this is fantastic, So immediately say to them, we need you for the next book launch. So they're going to be at the next book launch. It's a 5-piece band, and they're going to take the roof off the place.
Magic. It sounds like it's going to be an absolutely fantastic time. Gaffer,
you're flying in with your helicopter as well, Graham.
Yeah, my helicopter that has extra large gas tank, so I can make it all the way across the Atlantic
easily.
And bypass all the germs that I would probably pick up from United Airlines. Thanks a lot, you bastards. Gaffer, give us your thoughts in terms of going into this book launch. What are your expectations? I mean, the myth and the legend of the Gaffer has grown in leaps and bounds. I mean, where does it go from here? What are you expecting from this? People know you now, right?
Yeah, well, the Scottish trilogy of book launches, each one's really been different. It's been a different theme and atmosphere. So going into this one, it's at the same venue, which it's the first time it's going to be at the same venue 2 times in a row. So going in it, I don't really know what to expect. What I can say is that it will probably be a little bit different.
Way to get to you didn't even know what to expect.
It'll be a little bit different for the last,
especially considering it's in the same place.
Well, he said it's going to be a little bit different, so I'm assuming he's going to buy a drink this time.
Are you going to sit in a different seat this time, or mix it up a little?
like the venue kind of dictates the atmosphere a little bit.
Who were you sitting beside at the last boot launch, Gaffer?
Last book launch, I was next to James Cameron, Frank for the Mailies boys, and a couple other folk as well. I think Chris was away at the back.
Okay.
Definitely, having the seats with tables and that definitely allowed you to get quite close to the people on Twitter that you've been speaking to for quite a while.
Sounds like
so hopefully this time,
yeah.
catch up with old friends and meet some new ones.
Fantastic. I would suggest sitting with different people this time. Mix it up and get out there and see as many of the fans of Paradise Preview as you can. I mean, sometimes they might be intimidated in approaching you. You got to look at it from their perspective as well. But no doubt, I have full faith that you'll have a brilliant time, as you always do, Gaffer. You are, I told this to you when I saw you last week. You are a man of many talents and much charisma. So, fantastic stuff. Thank you for joining us tonight. Sam McLeod.
Well, also, Graham, just before Gaffer shoots off, I mean, there's also a lot of women that go to these things.
That's true. Gaffer.
And it's, I know Joss is a young, single, desperate man, but the women play a huge part in these things. They really do, and it's the women have inspired this book, and it's dedicated to three of them in the book itself. And I'll be talking about that at the time and all that. But the flip side of that is, you've always got to watch if you're somebody like me or Gaffer, the huge celebrities that are there, that somebody's girlfriend could come up to you, and you've just got to sit there knowing full well the husband's staring at you, with your hands behind your back and stuff like that. And that's something that Gaffer's had to put up with quite a lot in the last 3 boot launches,
That's definitely a responsibility, Gaffer. It's something that you need to be aware of because you don't want to get your head kicked in. So just be mindful of that, and just try and be, respectful and be aware. That's the key here, Gaffer. Be aware. And before you make your move, you got to be in control. So best of luck, Gaffer. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, brilliant stuff. Sam McLeod, thank you as well for joining us. Before we wrap this up, give the listeners a sense for maybe somebody that's listening in that hasn't been to a book launch just yet, but they're signed up. This is going to be their first one. Give them a sense of what to expect. What's going to be like. Maybe some of the anxieties that they might have going into it. Just give us a sense for what's going to take place.
Yeah, great shout. It's going to be a great night. You're going to enjoy yourself. You might not know what to expect, but in terms of pitching up, you think, yeah, great. I'm going to go along. It's going to be Celtic fans, but it's a fantastic night. You get to speak to Paul. You get to speak to fellow Bampots, and you really won't regret it. It's absolutely fantastic. I've met some great people, and I'd be surprised if you pitch up and you think it's been a bad year. It's been absolutely fantastic. Get there. You'll enjoy it.
Very well said, Sam.
See, I thought he was going to say, I've met some great people and Gaffer.
Sam, did you witness the Fenian breakdancer at the one in the Admiral?
That's it. I met Josh and enjoyed it. It was fine.
No, see, this Fenian breakdancer was a myth put up with a parrot. I don't think he was the only person in the whole venue that actually seen this so-called Fenian breakdancer.
Oh, he was the only one sober.
Well, true, aye.
That's true.
But this Fenian breakdancer's not appeared at any other boot launch either, to my knowledge, or so.
He might make a secret appearance. You don't know.
Oh, Josh, you sound like you've got inside information there.
Oh, Gaffer's
green Portuguese greens.
Oh, Jesus! I took about 2 weeks to get over that.
Yeah, obviously we're gonna have to start asking ourselves what's in that mellow birds, because it's only the parrot that seems to be aware of this, and maybe Gaffer holding something close to the vest.
Well, the parrot. I mean, the people have asked about the buffet, and I have to also. I was only made aware of this last week, by the way, and I really, if he's listening, I really apologise about this. Was that the parrot obviously done the buffet the last time when he was helped by Suzanne King, but the thing that went down there, and this is need a service to the parrot because it was good stuff, was the cake that was made by Paul Lee.
Ah, yeah.
Who's at St. Sixtus, and every single person, and I never realised until last Saturday, I think, that it was actually him that made it. And Paul's one of these guys that everybody's like, he comes across quite a sort of aggressively on Twitter, if you like, but
he's a maddie.
He's mad, but he's got a heart of gold, and I love him. And it's people like that make the book launches. I just go up there, stand, talk shite, and that's that. But basically, the people that come there won't make them, because if I could go up there and stand, talk shite, if there's nobody there, nobody would hear it, and that'd be it finished. So it's they wee bits of input and all that, and Sam. I mean, Sam's coming down from Aberdeen, and he tells you, booked up and all that, and that kind of excitement that he purveys over to you kind of inspires you to keep going and stuff like that. Especially when you've got people like Gaffer, being negative all the time and try to steal the show.
I mean, yeah, somebody needs to bring the atmosphere back up. It's not going to do it on its own, especially like you said.
Gaffer's the cooler.
Yeah, definitely. Cool hand, Luke. Chaz, thank you also for joining us. Give us a sense. I mean, obviously a lot of people maybe have turned up to the book launches thus far, and maybe, like Paul was saying, it does tend to get a bit busy for him. There's so much going on. It's very crowded, but give us a sense for the kind of guy Paul is. You probably know Paul as well as anybody. Give us a sense for, like, somebody wants to approach Paul and just shake his hand and, just say hello. I mean, what's Paul like? Give us a sense for, your take on the man himself.
Just don't say you're for the FBI or the CIA or on a fucking mile. Paul is a great guy. I've got a lot of time, a lot of respect for Paul. I really enjoyed having the crack with him in a pub over here, like, you know what I mean? And so we had a few wee days out there with him, up at his kids' party and stuff. And met something about the place, and if anybody has the chance to go up and chat to him and get to know him, then I definitely recommend you do it, because you'll not meet a nicer guy out there.
I would definitely agree. After spending a week with him last week, and the numerous times that we've gotten together, as well as just working together, I mean, you won't find somebody that's more sincere. In
absolutely.
Their intent and their objectives, and it's fantastic to be involved with you and Paul, and we just wish you nothing but the best for this book launch, as well as the book itself. Before we go, give us the information about The Last Pearl Diver. Where can we get this? Obviously, we can find you on Twitter at Paul Larkin74. But where can people find The Last Pearl Diver? It's out April 1st?
It'll be out April 1st on Lulu.com, $10.99. It'll be available on Kindle, £6.35. You can buy it, contact me and buy it for iPad, £6.35, and it'll appear on Amazon in a month after that kind of thing. But I'd just like to say thanks for the nice words you said, for participating in this, for the people who buy the books, who come to the book launches, talk to me on Twitter. That's what it's all about. And I kind of knew that it might end like this, so I've got something lined up secretly. Something that I've been working on for a couple of weeks. It was a hard kind of task, as you'll see, how to get it. And I've got something lined up with Gaffer's the only other person that knows about this. Josh, so could you just play the thing that I've got lined up for, which is my present to everybody on the show, everybody who bought the book, everybody who comes to the book launches, and everybody in the Celtic family. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. We've had to be kind of covered in a veil of secrecy with this next interview for national reasons and national security. It's an absolute pleasure and honour to welcome the former President of the United States, Mr. William Jefferson Clinton. Are you there, Mr. President?
I'm here. Thank you so much for having me, Paul. It's a distinct honour to join you today.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now, this is a complete exclusive to the Homeboys Weekend Extra, in that we were able to find out that Mr. Clinton, as former President, was actually a Celtic supporter and is a Celtic supporter. So, Mr. President, can I ask you first and foremost, what was it that first drew you to Celtic?
Well, when I was a Rhodes Scholar at Oxford University, during that period, Celtic was the best soccer team on the face of the earth. And while I was over, I took quite an interest in a tiny little guy called Jinky. Mm-hmm. And hey, what a fantastic player he was, just to watch, and just very entertaining. And hearing about the message that Celtic was born out of with charitable roots was something that was very near and dear to my heart.
That's absolutely fantastic. Now, Mr. President, obviously, you're one of the most powerful men in the world, but I think the listeners would be really interested to know, have you ever had any dealings with the Celtic board?
I have not. I've reached out to the Celtic board on a couple of occasions for some different ideas that I'd had in terms of partnering with the Clinton Global Initiative, which is my foundation. I've yet to hear back, but that's to be understood. I mean, they know all the sort of soccer specific sort of issues. That's out of my concept, but I'd certainly love to be involved with the club because it's something that is very near and dear to my heart in terms of building a bridge to the 21st century.
Well, I'm sure the Celtic board will be happy to reach out to you, Mr. President. Now, one of the kind of key issues that's ongoing in the world right now is the current situation regarding the Green Brigade at Celtic Park. Can I just ask you, Mr. President, what your thoughts are on the Green Brigade?
Well, in terms of the Green Brigade specifically, and if I can make a statement to them right now on your show, I would say, I feel your pain. I know exactly what they are going through. During my presidency, there were plenty of people who wanted to take shots at me and spread innuendo and rumor and so on. But as long as you keep the focus on what it is that you want to do, if you want to be passionate about Celtic, the Celtic Football Club, that's what you do. There's nothing that's wrong with Celtic Football Club that can't be fixed by what is right with Celtic Football Club.
Yeah, I think all our listeners would agree with that. Now, let's come to left field, Mr. President. This is something that's been bugging a lot of people in Scotland, and we're hoping that an intelligent, powerful man like yourself can shed some light on it. Do you know what the phrase cash and carry means?
No, I believe I have absolutely no idea what cash and carry means.
Okay, we'll move on to that one then, Mr. President. Now, we asked you earlier on about if you'd ever had dealings with the Celtic board. One of your fellow citizens, a Mr. Snoop Dogg / Lion, has made it known that he would like to actually be on the Celtic board. Is that something you'd like to see happen?
Yeah, I've been able to meet Snoop Dogg a couple of times. I'm a huge fan of his music. I mean, drop it like it's hot. That's something I can get down with. But I think it would breathe new life and energy into the Celtic board. So I think that could be something that would be very, very positive, Paul.
Yeah, okay, Mr. President. And finally, because we know you're a busy man and you've got lots of things to do, can you give us a quick prediction for the Dundee game on Sunday?
Well, I predict that if Paddy McCourt does not find the field on the pitch against Dundee, you're going to have a riot on your hands, and it's going to be 3-0 to Celtic.
That was the 42nd President of the United States, Mr. William Jefferson Clinton.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.